This audio program is presented by Audible.com. Audible, audio that speaks to you wherever you are.
Welcome to the program. We begin this evening with the Russian conductor, Valery Gergiev.
Russian music is, as is Austrian German tradition or Italian opera tradition, very, very powerful. In the world of music, there are 3-4 pillars, they keep basically all of this huge musical world, and German, Italian are famous to be very much developed, as you know, in 16th, 17th century, but from 18th century, and especially throughout 19th and 20th, as we again know, Russian music was making a huge progress, and great composers coming out of this school one after the other, and I am very proud and very honored to represent this tradition worldwide, of course.
We conclude with the American writer, director, and actor Tyler Perry. His new film is called Alex Cross.
I've always wanted to do these types of roles, but I've never had the opportunity. I've never been offered something that made sense, or everything that was offered to me was already in my wheelhouse. Yeah. It's like, no, I don't need to play Medea 3. I kind of got that character already, yes, so I'm looking for something very different, and it intrigued me on so many levels because of that.
Gergiev and Perry coming up.
From our studios in New York City, this is Charlie Rose.
Master Valery Gergiev is here. He is one of the world's most dynamic, admired, and busiest conductors. He is director of the treasured Mariinsky Theater in St. Petersburg, also principal conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra. Here he is performing Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony with the orchestra. He is in New York to lead the World Orchestra for Peace in tribute to the late Sir George Solti at Carnegie Hall. He will also conduct the London Symphony Orchestra at Avery Fisher Hall in a series of concerts that are devoted to Brahms. I'm pleased to have him back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
How did you come to take over this orchestra?
The World Orchestra for Peace is an ensemble of absolutely first-class musicians who represent good 40 or 50 countries. And these are countries in Latin America, of course, North America, many from Europe, and quite many from Asia. Of course, Russians are there. Also countries which were part of territory of Soviet Union some 20 years ago. And I think it makes a very good statement every time for peace, for understanding between cultures, between nations, different religious or different historical background, but music unites.
How well did you know Solti?
Did know him well. I met him for the first time in Moscow in 1990. Chicago Symphony Orchestra was brilliant. Under his baton, there were 2 or 3 concerts in Moscow. I remember 2 at least. I attended myself. Then they went to Leningrad. That was first time we met, and then we met another maybe 15, 20 times. Again in Leningrad, then already St. Petersburg, and we made very good plans for 1999 for him to conduct Queen of Spades, great opera of Tchaikovsky. Pig Dame is known as Pig Dame as well. And everything looked incredibly exciting, but then suddenly he passed away in 1997. And he died in the same day with Princess Diana. That's what also, end of August, beginning of September 1997, and then some maybe 2 months later there was a discussion with me if the next concert of World Orchestra for Peace will take place in Baden-Baden, Germany. And if I can become a conductor for this orchestra, and it started. And then there were many, many visits, many continents, which include, of course, China, Russia, Jerusalem, Abu Dhabi. I remember Hungary, his native place, Scholti's. Also, we saw his grave and grave of Bartok next to each other. That's very symbolic because nobody did as much for Bartok as did Maestro Scholti. And I could learn from him quite a lot. That was in my years, in the beginning of my leadership with Mariinsky in St. Petersburg. He was one of the powerful inspiration models and also great patron and friend who supported me, especially in belief that I can stay in a difficult country and work with musical goals, artistic goals, and I will always achieve what I want if I'm focused and concentrated.
So he made you believe that. Has that turned out to be true?
It did in many, many, many ways. For example, he knows that I represent big tradition. You don't go away from the roots of your tradition. Russian music is as it is. Austrian, German tradition or Italian opera tradition, very, very powerful. In the world of music, there are 3-4 pillars, you know, that they keep basically all of this huge musical world. And German, Italian are famous to be very much developed, as you know, in 16th, 17th century, but from 18th century, and especially throughout 19th and 20th, as we again know, Russian music was making a huge progress, and great composers coming out of this school one after the other. And I am very proud and very honored to represent this tradition worldwide, of course, which includes quite a big number of operas and symphonic repertoire. I personally conducted in New York with many orchestras, which include Metropolitan Opera, New York Philharmonic, and of course my orchestras who come with me from Europe.
I'm admiring of hard work, as you might imagine. Why
You do work hard.
Yes, but so do you. Why do you do it?
At some point I think it's difficult to stop. At some point I think because it was only hard work which could make it, so to say, to some quality and some level which I envisaged myself was what I wanted. And it started late 80s and then throughout 90s. I traveled a lot and I worked hard with orchestra in Russia, but also I opened for myself many opportunities in US, in Canada, in Europe. Then I started to conduct only few orchestras, but focused on it. So my first years in America, 20 orchestras, all top orchestras. My next 5 years, 3 orchestras, but focused. Metropolitan Opera, for example, it's not only orchestra, it's a big institution. So we did, I would easily say 25 operas maybe. It's a big number. It's less than Jimmy Levine, but it's a big number. And
Glad to see him coming back, aren't you?
well, absolutely. And what happens is when you focus, then you build.
Right.
If you put everywhere some of your energy, you don't see how building goes up.
Right. I agree with you. Take a look at this. This is an interview I did. I did several interviews with Sir George Scholti. This is one way back in 1993, December 2nd. Here it is.
Tell me about the relationship between a conductor and his musicians. What's going on a podium?
Look, it is either a good marriage or a bad marriage. It's either a love affair or nothing. There is nothing between. Musicians either like you or dislike you. And I like them or don't like them. One of our success with the Chicago Symphony was and is that we have a sort of strange chemistry. The same elements music making interest them as interest me from the very first rehearsal on, namely, basically, rhythmical talent, which I have, which they have, dynamic sense, which they have, which I have, and sense of balance, sense of building a movement, which they love. Clarity, with other words. Clarity. I don't like swim. I don't like making music structure which swims. Many people love it. I love clear music making.
Great man, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
A great man.
Absolutely. One of the greatest colleagues and also one of human beings you can always see as an ambassador in this world, difficult world, coming from difficult country, Hungary, before the Second World War.
Exactly.
Having Jewish roots, being in Switzerland, in Germany, then in London, then in Chicago, but always representing this human message for life, for understanding, for peace. That's why this orchestra was born. It wasn't just a toy for a great conductor who conducts all great orchestras and conducted all great symphonies or operas already. He just made a statement that he didn't want to continue only with Chicago Symphony, but take South Koreans and North Koreans, take Japanese and Chinese, take maybe Latin Americans who always have their own differences. We sometimes don't know it, but they do have differences. Arab world, they have differences. It's not just one peaceful Arab world. There are differences, complications.
Yes.
That's where music can unite. Music is not a total magic which will just bring peace forever for all the global space, but it should be done as much as often as possible. The musicians got
And
together.
that's what this concert on Friday night is about, too.
Make another statement, by the way, for the first time in New York and Chicago, for the first time. So it's a long story. It's nearly 20 years, and it's only for the first time this orchestra is in New York and Chicago.
Is the Mariinsky Orchestra also coming out with a recording of the Wagner Ring Cycle?
Yes, it's a major project, and we already recorded Rheingold and the Valkyrie, the two operas, so it's a half of the Ring Cycle. And it will be a major recording simply because it comes from great concert hall.
Which one?
Mariinsky Concert Hall. It's a
your
new
concert
one.
hall, yeah, the new one.
We built
Right.
it 5 years ago, but
Right.
it's definitely one of the greatest halls with acoustics. You can call it Stradivarius or Guarneri instrument, but it's an instrument. It's not
Yeah.
just a construction.
Right, right.
It's an instrument. And the way we built it was to make only one priority. It's a great instrument. It sounds incredible. To make recordings in this hall, it's a dream. It's a dream come true, but also it is a luxury because you have an orchestra, chorus, and voices who hear all the colors they can produce immediately. It's very important psychologically for artists to know that nothing will be lost. And the Valkyrie has tremendous cast. It will be out very soon, of course, in US. We will make presentation, but I am very much looking forward to finish this project. And we have best Russians and best what you call Western voices. Amongst them, René Pape, or Jonas Kaufmann, or Nina Stemme. Of course, major names which are known as the Wagner singers, but also fantastic Russian voices. And I think it makes it all together a very interesting combination.
Is there something that would represent your great towering ambition and achievement in music? I mean, you have buildered beyond a conductor. You do all these things. I mean, you now celebrate, what, the 13th, what is the anniversary? The 25th anniversary?
25th was Mariinsky, soon.
Mariinsky, yeah.
As my music directorship, 25, artistic directorship, which is a good distance. It's not a small distance. And I saw Soviet Union falling apart. I saw Russia being totally young country, trying to build democracy, but also trying to save whatever national wealth was then. It was very difficult to understand. Was it just gas, oil? Was it rivers and forests? Was it a vast, vast country, huge territory, but also culture? I represent maybe not such a group of people which talks every day, but I represent a group of people which always reminds everyone that you lose your culture, it's maybe the biggest loss you have. Of course, national resources, always people talk. Oh, energy, of course, it's important today for everyone in the world. What about culture? We think it's always important to have both.
And your responsibility is for the culture.
Well, I do my best and I perform quite often.
Is your friend Vladimir Putin responsive to that?
I think he supports, first of all, I don't see him often, maybe 3-4 times a year. I know him for 20 years, long before he was a president.
In St. Petersburg?
In St. Petersburg, of course. And I was rather known man already then, because I lead such an institution. No, Hermitage Museum, Mariinsky, are in a way face of the country. So you get rather famous if you are on the top of this institution, leadership, you represent immediately a lot, even if you don't deserve it yet. You already represent 230 years tradition, a glorious tradition. But the good quality of Vladimir Putin today is he understands that there are treasures of national culture, and you don't take it like it's just another item. I think we are building now new opera house. It is important for us to have such an incredible opportunity, a platform where we perform opera, ballet, symphonic music. Also educational projects will go up immediately because all the schools, universities in St. Petersburg, it's a city of 5 million people. You can perform Swan Lake or Nutcracker 20 times a year. You can perform 50 times a year each. Of those 50 Nutcrackers a year, you can devote 40 to schools. It's a huge opportunity. This is how you help young people to understand they're part of this tradition. Because, of course, they have all these toys, and then also my kids, they do it all the time. But they will go for the first time when they're 8 or 9 years old to see the magic of theater. Most of them will come back. We know that. Most of them will come back. It's much easier to start at 8, 9, 10, and then understand ballet, opera, theater, music, rather than do it when you are 25, 30 for the first time. It's too late, maybe.
Back to politics for a moment. When you look at Russia today, it's democracy, economic growth, human rights, press freedom. Where do you think they are on those issues?
I think for the country which has 20 years history, if you start from breakup of Soviet Union, things are looking better than they could. In the scenario which I saw myself 12 years ago, the country was to disintegrate because there was no unity, and we could see it, we could feel it, and the historical role of Putin and his colleagues, don't forget about the government he had. If the names like Kudrin or Gergiev ring familiar, these are two ministers, Minister of Finance and Minister of Economy, who introduced this change. The economy started to work, and then everyone thinks it's oil prices. No, it is oil price, one element is important, but also how government and how leadership of the country work together in order to make rules and circumstances for the growth, and also for young people to get jobs. For example, look at Spain now. The word is that 50% of young people are unemployed.
That is the number.
It's terrifying, correct?
Yes.
So then you are 25, you don't know how every second young professional, already being professional, doesn't know where he will work. So Russia does maybe a little bit better than average in Europe with the human rights. Well, the stories like Three Girls get famous. They even get more famous than the killing of miners in South Africa, which amazes me in the modern world.
Okay, but wait a minute. The story does get a lot of attention, but I mean, even Medvedev thought that had some question about how long they should be in prison.
Oh, I think they should not even talk about 7 years. That's ridiculous, I think. But
I mean, your friend, the president, could stop this in a second.
Well, I don't think, first of all, he's thinking of how to put these girls in prison in the first place. Most of people of Russia were disgusted with the fact that they went to the biggest church. This is,
in other words, they didn't approve of what they. It's one thing not to approve of what they did. I mean, there was a satire about him. Yes.
No, I think I separate. It's not about him.
Yeah.
It's about country. The country, because if it was only about one man, then you don't discuss a country, because it's not a country which has total dependence.
So you're saying it was not an insult to Vladimir Putin, it was an insult to Russia?
I think it's insult to the people.
To go there in that place and do what they did in terms of the performance they performed.
For example, St. Paul, I performed sometimes in London. I have an orchestra in London. If you do something like this in St.
sometimes
Paul,
everywhere.
let alone if you do something in the mosque like this, you get killed. So if you do it in a country like Britain, maybe at best you're just in prison. Maybe they just tell you, oh, bravo, 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 that was funny, go away, you are free. I don't think it will happen easily in every country, because there is a pride in every nation. And in the big church in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, There are many churches destroyed throughout 20th century by Bolsheviks. I know cities in Russia where more than half, maybe 3/4 of the churches was completely destroyed. So it's a painful memory for the people. Now they are restored. Many of them are restored, not all, many. And then comes someone not known to large number of people, absolutely not known. Not even 1% of the country knows. Yes, they get much more famous after this. This is the achievement. But
you think that was their motivation?
For me, it looks like a business plan. I think that very soon they will start giving concerts and earning millions of dollars. But we all earn a lot of money. We are famous, but not the way to the fame they chose for themselves. I will for myself discuss, for me or for Mariinsky. We have famous artists, Anna Netrebko, Olga Borodina, you know, many of them. So they didn't need this. You know, you sing, you dance, you conduct, you play piano, you get famous. But not through this scenario. I know the church, I wouldn't touch myself. I would never do this because it makes you feel a little bit, oof, why?
Okay, so
church?
Once they did it, what should have happened to them?
I think they should spend 1 or 2 years in a monastery somewhere, and then they may be in a peaceful, quiet situation. Think, if they want to do something for the country, they don't have to do it the way they did. But it's my private opinion. I never followed this story. I was not interested. Yeah. I only learned there was something happening when I was watching Western. You know, I do sometimes watch CNN or BBC, of course, and I thought, whoa, it's getting a big story, you know. But I repeat, I saw in the same news 2 months ago, maybe, shockingly, 34 miners were killed by police in South Africa. It got very little attention. So I thought, how come we get used to the deaths that we don't even stop? There is a line going, so 34 killed, but they were protesting. Those miners.
It got a bit more attention than that, the miners.
Finally, maybe yes, but not immediately. In any case, I hope there will be much more peace. This is why we're here. And I think in Russia, just to answer a very important question you asked me, I think Russia needs now, in the next 3-5 years, let's put a short distance of 3-5 years, a certain unity. The leadership of Russia is a complicated thing. For example, my very good friend, Alexei Kudrin, ex-finance minister, who spent 12 years as a finance minister of Russia, maybe being one of the best finance ministers in the world. West doesn't even realize it's not necessarily coming from here or from England, sometimes from other countries. There are very brilliant people there. So he demonstrated.
He demonstrated what?
The art of being a leader in the financial world, especially when you have a big country and hundreds of billions of debts. And in 2, 3, 4 years, the country is in a much better shape. The salaries went up. I repeat, country has very little. You know, Russia is today blessed maybe with this comfortable situation that we don't have trillions of debts, which today it would be like this if you live with those trillions. In America it's different, but someone at some point will be responsible. That says it's not good to think that our children have to pay price or grandchildren. This is not helpful. And Kudrin is one of the most prominent figures in Russia. By the way, always was right hand of Putin. And looking at financial situation, looking at problems everywhere in Russia, very steadily, very quietly, without many interviews, so the situation became much better. So country is not the healthiest in the world, but I feel somewhat healthier than many, or maybe even healthier than most. Freedom of press, I think in Russia the complications are that press represents either public opinion, but not always, or corporate interests, very often, very often. This is dangerous, but so it is around the world. Corporate interests, very mighty, powerful corporations, making huge money. I don't think they make it a secret that they have to put the interests first, and big part of Russian press will be somehow on their side. Somehow. This is what I was noticing for many years. The biggest task, I think, for media in Russia is to pay much more attention to those issues like, I know very well Scandinavian countries. You cannot pollute their lakes. You cannot destroy their forests. You cannot pollute their air. Their drinking water is high quality, because if it is not, they will protest.
Do you think Russia should be doing more in terms of bringing some kind of stop to the violence in Syria?
I think Russia and US should work together, and the decisions which are made long ago in the times of Soviet Union still prevail. There are two worlds,
Gorbachev.
East-West. Yeah, Gorbachev, who I know well, wanted to, he really was able to melt it down. So there was a feeling of, oh, it's coming together.
Right.
It never really did. Although I know that Yeltsin and then Putin, I think they put quite an effort in making positions closer. Yeltsin worked with Bill Clinton, and then Putin worked with George W. Bush. But it never really worked fully. I'm observing it all the time, because then geopolitical interests, maybe the cultural difference, but today Russia is so close to Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, yes, Syria, not that close to Libya and so on, but Egypt, but still quite close. And I think strategically it is maybe all in all a wrong movement to go totally apart. You know, America goes this way, Russians this way, diplomatically and also strategically, which is two different things.
It's an important role that Russia could play, not only in terms of the withdrawal of the U.S. from Afghanistan, lots of other issues. Thank you for coming. Pleasure to see you. We would like Friday night, the big concert. This is Tchaikovsky Symphonies No. 1 through 3 with the London Symphony Orchestra, and this is the Mariinsky Orchestra, Tchaikovsky Concerto No. 1, Piano Concerto No. 1.
It's a winner of Tchaikovsky competition, the young pianist Daniil Trifonov. And I have a pleasure to work with him for last year after the competition. I'm president of this competition after the death of Slava Rostropovich.
Right.
And we bring young people, and he's doing very well.
Thank you for coming. Pleasure to see you.
My pleasure, as always.
We'll be back. Stay with us.
Tyler Perry is here. He is an actor, a director, a screenwriter, a playwright, a producer, and an author. His various productions have made hundreds of millions of dollars. They have catered to a church-going African-American audience often ignored by Hollywood. This month, Tyler Perry stars in a new movie. It is called Alex Cross. Here is the trailer.
It's FBI profiling, 35% more money. Regular hours, not as unpredictable as these.
How are you gonna convince me to leave Detroit?
The National Guard and a drink. Alex Cross.
Got ourselves a Four Roses. Hey, Alex, you're gonna want to prepare yourself for this one. Woman was tortured to death.
Had to be at least 2 or 3 guys to pull this off.
No, this is one guy.
I'm fascinated by pain.
He's ex-military. Special forces, judging by his tactics. Trying to make somebody hurt. Wants somebody to pay, wants the world to suffer. This guy, he's checking off the list. He's focused, he's got a clear path.
Dr. Cross, are you there?
Are you having fun?
Inflicting pain is a crucial part of my true calling.
You are sick and twisted.
Dr. Cross, you're taking this personally. By the way, you have a very pretty wife. She looks stunning.
You won't stop. I've seen his face. I've heard his voice. I will meet his soul at the gates of hell before I let him take a person that I love from me.
There is not one scenario that you have thought of that he has not already figured out.
I'm going to enjoy this.
We've got to get inside his head. Where would he be?
He's already in the building. Move! Let me see your hands!
can do better than that.
I am pleased to have Tyler Perry back at this table. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So you do not have enough to do.
Just enough.
There is Alex Cross, a character that the great Morgan Freeman had made.
Yes.
And so you, in the full sense of your acting chops, you see where I'm going?
Yeah, that's exactly where you're going. Yeah, that's the only thing that gave me pause about taking the role, because he is Morgan Freeman. The man played God in a movie.
And Nelson Mandela.
And Nelson Mandela, yeah. And I was very intimidated by that.
Yeah.
But what I know for sure is that as I looked at the character, I looked at the script, I looked at the arc of the character. It was very intriguing. And then I looked at James Patterson's original description of the book, of the physicality of Alex Cross, and I thought, hey, that's me.
And you look like Alex Cross?
I look like...
As described by James Patterson,
as described by James Patterson, the author. Size, weight, build, African-American, you know, all of those things, yeah. So it was something that intrigued me and made me say yes.
I always thought I could play Medea.
That would be pretty funny.
I have to work on the voice, so wouldn't I?
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
So tell me the story of Alex Cross, and this could be not just one movie, but 2 movies, 3 movies. This could be the Tyler Perry kind of opportunity.
Who knows? Who knows? It's such a great story. It's actually the prequel before Kiss the Girls and Along Came a Spider, which Morgan Freeman did. And this is going back to his life and showing you his family and how it all started for him. This is when he was a police officer in Detroit before he started working for the FBI. And he starts tracking a serial killer, just this psychotic, insane person played by Matthew Fox, brilliantly.
Menacingly brilliant.
Oh, brilliantly. Menacingly brilliant. That's great. Great words. It's their story, his story tracking him and how they become mortal enemies, and a battle ensues, some things that happen in the movie to have you on the edge of your seat. And it's a thriller in every sense of the word, and it's nonstop from beginning to end.
Is this not in terms of the acting required, what you can do? Is this in terms of what you want to do, a stretching and moving forward to a new place?
I think that it is a stretching for absolutely in the acting, but also I've always wanted to do these types of roles, but I've never had the opportunity. I've never been offered something that made sense, or everything that was offered to me was already in my wheelhouse. I was like, no, I don't need to play Medea 3. I kind of got that character already, so I'm looking for something very different, and it intrigued me on so many levels because of that.
This reminds me of your story about at some point in your life where you appreciated the benefit of owning something.
Sure.
You know, when your father, was it your father that would go and build houses for someone else, and they would then sell them and make all the profit?
Yeah.
Somewhere that idea that if you own it, you're better off.
Very early on. I learned so much. I'm such a student of life, and I learned so much just by watching and looking at my father and how hard he worked and how happy he was when he got home on Friday with his check of $700-800. If he made $800 in the 70s, whew, big money.
Salary was okay for him.
He was super excited about that. But I would look at him talk about the guy who owned the house, and then I would notice that the guy sold the house, and this is me, a little boy, realizing this, for 10 times more than he made, or 1,000 times more than he made. So it was all very interesting, and it was such a lesson that took me a long way.
Okay, which brings my question: do you own this movie?
I do not. I do. No, listen, James Patterson, buddy. This I do not. I showed up here as work for hire.
Oh, did you?
You're
a hired gun here, are you?
Work for hire. I've only done that twice in my theatrical career, and one was Star Trek when I did a little cameo.
But I tell you where this is different too. I mean, it is said that you're a master of understanding your audience. Your audience, which Medea and a lot of other things have served.
Yeah.
You might define that audience broader and deeper than anybody else does, and you understand it certainly better than anybody else does. But this is a different audience, isn't it? Thriller?
You know what?
In part yours, but in part something that maybe the other characters had not reached.
Absolutely. I agree that it is in part my audience, because what I know about my audience is we don't just like comedy, we like some of everything. So definitely it is.
And you don't just like black movie.
Absolutely. You know,
whatever that means.
Yeah, whatever that means. Whatever you're good. Then that's a good point. That's something well worth discussing. But it is a thriller. It is, and what I've noticed about my audience, my core, my base has always been the same. But it has changed a great deal outside of where it started and around the world. So it's very interesting to see. It'll be very interesting to see what happens.
But my impression of you in this remarkable arc and journey that you've been on is that one thing has led to another.
Sure.
That you didn't sit down one morning while you were still living in that car and say, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then pretty soon I'll be king of the mountain.
Yeah, no. And it was never about being king of the mountain. It was always about what is the next step. And there was always, this is why I talk about being, having a God voice, because there are things I cannot explain. Charlie, there are things I cannot explain in my life. I can tell you that there are very, very talented people all over who never get a chance. But if everything doesn't line up, if one decision is made that is contradictory to where you are going, it changes everything. So there's no other way for me to explain that. So I clearly understand what you're saying. No, it wasn't that. It was totally just the opportunity would come, and I felt this is the way that I'm.
So did this opportunity come to you, or did you seek it out?
It came to me, actually. It came to me.
So somebody who was producing this movie. Yeah. Is it Patterson himself, or he just simply owns the rights to it, or what?
I'm not sure if he was a producer on the film, but it was Rob Cohen, the director, who did Fast and Furious and a few other movies, was thinking Tyler Perry. And Charles King, my agent over at William Morris, they called and said, listen, would you be interested in doing Alex Cross? I said, Morgan Freeman, Alex Cross? No, wouldn't be interested in doing that at all. Yeah, I know.
But how did they convince you? Or how did you convince yourself?
I read the script, and again, going back to James Patterson's and his description of the character and looking at the fans of the books, because more than anything, their first meeting with James Patterson, I said to him, I do not want to let the Alex Cross audience down, and I don't want to let you down. If I don't feel like I can do this, I'm going to tell you no. And I sat with it for a while, and it felt right.
What's this I hear about you want to take over Oprah's channel?
Yeah, that's not what you heard. You did not hear that at all. No, you did not hear that at all.
She'll be mine.
No. That is the Oprah Winfrey Network. Let me make that clear. That's pretty good.
They're owned by Tyler Perry.
No, it's not Tyler Perry's Oprah Winfrey Network. It is the Oprah Winfrey Network.
Oh, I heard wrong.
You totally heard. You totally heard wrong. That's pretty good, Charlie. Totally heard wrong. The partnership between us, I think, is very smart on so many levels, and we've talked about it for a while. But there was one thing we both were concerned about, because friendship and business don't usually mix, and the friendship is very important to both of us. You know, I've gained a great deal of insight and self-awareness from who she has been over the years and who she's been in my life, and believe it or not, I've been able to share a lot with her to help her do the same.
Oh, it stopped there. What have you done?
More than anything, I think being a friend to her. And being an ear to her, and just kind of being a mirror at times to just say, what do you think, well, why do you feel that way, or let's check in with that emotion. And it's so funny, some of the things she'll do when I'll do those things to her. She's like, who are you, Dr. Phil?
That's what I was going to say.
So
if you have Tyler, you don't need to pay money for a medical doctor or a psychiatrist. Call up Tyler. He'll ask all the questions you need to know.
But she's brilliant at it.
That's another career, psychiatrist.
No. We'll pass. But for me, just again, the most important thing, and for her, was keep making sure that the friendship was not affected.
Well, she went through some tough goings. I mean, she's talked to me about it on CBS.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't turn out exactly the way she wanted to kickstart the Oprah Network.
Right.
And she had to come together and say, I got to focus here, folks, which is always an answer. Focus, and you'll find out that maybe.
Which was good for her, I tell you what. It was really good for her to have that moment, to sit in it and reflect and understand that, you know, challenges will shake things up. But to ride a few waves is okay. It was good for her, and it was also good for me, because I was very close to doing a deal to having my own channel at the same time. And we're both going down this road, and I'm thinking, I'm watching her and all that she's going through, and I'm like, wait a minute, we may want to team up. Let me just sit with you for a while. Let's steady your ship, and then I'll take off on my own ship, which is not own. It will be a Tyler Perry.
Tyler and Oprah can own the Discovery Network.
Well, you have to talk to David Zassoff about that. That'll be a fight. That'll be a fight.
Not easy, is
that
it?
Guy's got some fight in him.
Yeah, he did. And got a lot of channels over there, too.
Yeah, a lot of channels.
Yeah. So what's going to happen? How are you going to partner with Oprah on this Oprah Network?
I'm starting with 2 television shows. We're going to do it.
Primetime things? Or?
Yeah, sitcom and a drama is where we're going to start.
Right.
And
you've done that before at TBS, didn't you?
Yeah.
Would you break your contract with TBS?
No, didn't have to break the contract. I've always been a bit of a free agent. So I've had enormous...
Is it TBS? Is it?
TBS,
yeah, right.
That's totally right. I've had enormous success there. And what I found about my audience is they'll come and leave. So I'm hoping that they come over to own and watch the show. So
wait a minute, they'll come and leave, meaning they'll come and go back to what?
You know what it is? It's a lot of times when shows are on the air, there are faithful fans who turn on the show, tune in, watch it, and then go to bed, put the kids down or whatever. They'll go on to whatever they do. So I'm hoping that same energy will follow to own, that when the shows are on the air, everybody shows up, watches the shows, stays with the network, see what's going on there, and continue to do that.
Or come over here and watch me.
Or come over here and watch you. Absolutely, absolutely.
The relationship between the two of you, though, is really, a powerful kind of sense of she made a difference in your life.
Yeah,
First of all,
yeah,
you were watching her, and you got some understanding from watching her about yourself, what you needed to do.
Yeah. I was about 17 or 18 years old, and she said it was cathartic. Here I am, 17, 18-year-old kid, product of public schools in New Orleans, got kicked out of my senior year, didn't know what cathartic meant. Yeah. Went and found a dictionary at the time. No internet, so you find the dictionary at the time, and I look it up, and I realized that the definition of cathartic, and I started writing. And I started to feel better.
Keeping a diary and everything.
Keeping journals. And what I did was, instead of using my name, because there was no privacy in the house I lived in, I used different characters' names. Because had somebody found it and read it, I didn't want them to know that I was talking about a lot of the things that I had experienced.
And it was a searing inside look at your own soul.
Yeah, really. And in a way that I had never done before. Because I had thought about it, but having an opportunity to actually put it on paper, there's something about writing the words, reading them back, and hearing them out loud, said to yourself, by yourself, that's beyond powerful. And that was a life-changing moment for me.
But did you have a writing gift?
Apparently, I did. I did not know it, had never been cultivated. And
nobody had ever said anything to you? In other words, nobody had said, you know how to use words, you know...
No, I didn't grow up in that kind of culture. I didn't grow up in a culture of where there were teachers and people in the neighborhood or our parents or loved ones or family members that encouraged anything artistic. It was all about, my father was very much, you go to work, you work in the sun, you pick up things, you lift, you build. That's the way of a man, and anything else than that is not manly.
Do you know why he abused?
You know what? This is the most fascinating thing, and that's such a great question, because for many years I just dismissed it. But I sat down a few years ago and found out some of his backstory. He, his sister, and his brother, he was 2 years old at the time. I think they were all, nobody was older than 6, were found in a drainage canal in rural Louisiana by a white man on a horse. He takes them to this woman named May, who was 14 years old. Whose father was a former slave, very, very old man who was bedridden, and May raised both of them. And the way
she's 14.
She's 14. She raised my father and his brother and my aunt, and the way she taught them, if they did something wrong, the way she punished them, she would put them in potato sacks, tie them in a tree, and beat them. So that's what he came from. That's all he knew. 3rd grade education, and all he knew is to work by his hands and be tough and hard and not show any love or any emotion or things like that. So it helped me to have a very clear understanding of who he is.
Is that why you forgave him?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I had forgiven him long before I actually found out this.
But was that an expiation? I mean, was that, in a sense, to forgive him was a catharsis for you?
Absolutely. And this is what I think that people don't realize, which is this is so important for anybody, especially for me. And I didn't realize the power of it. I didn't even understand it. When you forgive people, you free yourself. And that was so fascinating for me to find out, because I realized once I forgave him, truly, I wasn't carrying the weight of it, because it really is something that sits inside of your spirit and soul like a weight. And you don't even know it until you forgive it and let it go.
It's a part of the idea that when you hate, it does more damage to you than it does to the person you hate.
Sure, absolutely. Subscribes totally to that. Yeah.
So, I mean, are you today, what's your mindset today?
You know, I took 8 weeks off this summer, and I really checked in with myself for the first time, which I'd never done in my entire career. And during that 8 weeks, I was really asking myself those questions. Because once my mother died...
Now, how'd you go about this?
What, taking the time off?
Yeah. No, you have to ask yourself this question.
But you know what I found is that when I am quiet, which I love to be quiet, I want to be in a place where there are more trees than people. I love to be quiet and not be distracted. And I sat in the space, literally asking myself these questions. How do you feel? How do you feel about that? And just writing things down about everything that had bothered me and checked into the answers. And I was surprised at some of them. But what I found more than anything is that I love what I'm doing.
Right.
I don't know how much longer I'm going to keep up this pace. But for right now, when I get to the end of this life, like your friend who was 92.
Right. Bill Friday.
When I get to the end of this life, I want to be exhausted and know that I got everything that was put here for me.
Can you imagine a place that you want to go that you say to yourself, not now, for example? There are certain actors who want to play a certain role, but they say, not now.
Yeah.
Is there any place you say, not now?
Yeah, I have a script called A Jazz Man's Blues. It's about a jazz singer and a Holocaust survivor who become friends in 1947.
Where, in Detroit or?
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans, yeah. And he came over from Europe during that time, and they became...
Is he a musician?
He's a manager. He would bring all these, the Jewish guys, a manager who would bring all these acts to Europe to play. And the character Bayou, which is the character I want to play, was in the army at the time. And they met there and became friends. And it's such a rich story. 15 years ago I wrote it. And have not done it because it's not time yet.
You have a drawer full of stories?
I have a brain full of stories.
I know you do.
Yeah. I had a storage bin in Atlanta in 1992 when I was put out of the apartment, and I put everything in the storage bin. Couldn't afford to pay it. It was $300. The bill was $312, and it was several months behind. And I lost every spiral, journal, notebook that I had when they sold it all.
Gee.
Yeah. So I'm starting.
Did you remember most of them?
No. But it would have been so interesting for me to be able to see them and know where I was, at 19, 20 years.
Everybody wants you to write a memoir. Are you ready to do that?
Not just yet. Not just yet. I am, there's so much. I was talking to, listen, there are two people on this earth that I wanted to meet. I've met everybody I wanted to meet, with the exception of these two people, and I've just met them. One is Oscar Pistorius.
Yes.
Love his story. And Norman Lear. And I got a chance to talk to him, and he said, at the end of our conversation...
The television producer and creator of All in the Family and Jeffersons and everything.
Oh, just brilliant guy who's had this remarkable life.
He's like 90-something now.
Yeah. He was writing his memoirs now. He told me he was at 600 pages, and he's only up to the 1980s. And he said it's been a great life. And then he ends the conversation with "to be continued," which I thought was so fascinating. So there's a lot more to be continued. I'm not ready yet. At 43, I'm starting to realize that, because what I don't want to happen is to wake up and be 65 and realize I've missed all of those years working my way through it. Yeah, because it is really possible, and because I had so much trauma in childhood, I was always pulling myself down into the moment. I know how to float above things, so I had all these great moments in life that I just floated above. So right now I'm always pulling myself down. Enjoy this moment; it's real. Have a good time in it.
You've earned it. Before you go, let's take a look at a clip from Alex Cross, in which Detective Cross gets a call from the serial killer Matthew Fox. Here it is.
You're being disrespectful. Very disrespectful, and I don't like that. Not at all. I'm a professional.
What do you call that little run-in last night, huh?
Dr. Cross, you're taking this personally.
Yeah, about as personal as you took running out of that building with your tail tucked between your legs.
That job I can finish on another day.
But failure has to be difficult for a guy like you. So how did you punish yourself? Was it wire under your fingernails?
Textbook psychology, Dr. Cross. Seriously. Textbook. By the way, your wife looks stunning.
Pretty intense.
Man, I want to see that movie.
Yeah, good. You should.
Good to see you.
Fantastic. Good to see you.
Tyler Perry, back in a moment. Stay with us. We say goodbye this evening with a preview of tomorrow night's show, a conversation with J.K. Rowling. How much trepidation did you have after you decided to put Harry to bed in deciding what you wanted to do and how to do what you inevitably wanted to do, is write another book?
That's a good question, because I had the idea for The Casual Vacancy right after finishing Deathly Hallows. You know, so I was actually promoting Deathly Hallows in the States, and I had the idea in the States while on a plane.
Right.
And
on a plane is crucial.
On a plane is crucial, because
so one
clearly
comes on a train and one
one's
comes
on a train,
plane.
one's on a plane. So you need to keep me moving, and then I get my ideas. There's always trepidation. I mean, I think that people might be surprised to know that I felt trepidation every time I produced a Potter book. You know, the weight of expectation there was, I won't say crushing, it was extraordinary and wonderful to have that weight of expectation.
You were
but
competing
at times,
with yourself.
Yeah, and with the expectations, latterly, of millions of fans, all of whom were very invested in the story and wanted to see what they wanted to see. And I knew where I was going, and I had to put on mental blinkers a lot and just think, I know where I'm going, I must not be influenced by this. So, in a sense, it was liberating to leave that weight of expectation behind and know that I could just do what I wanted to do. It was very freeing. But I must say that I spent the first 2 years working on The Casual Vacancy telling myself, you don't even have to publish that, and you don't even have to publish this book. And that was a way of bringing down my own awareness that, you know, people, it wasn't going to be what some people wanted it to be. You know, because as we both know, I could have kept writing Harry Potters forever, pretty much.
And why didn't you?
Because I always envisaged it as a 7-book series. I had enough plot for 7 books, and when I always knew I would stop at 7. And I'm not going to lie, it was heartbreaking in many ways, because Harry was with me through a very turbulent period in my life, and it was always a place that I could go. You talk about readers always being able to go there. It was a place I was able to go, and to close the door was like a death. But I knew that it was time to go, and I've not regretted it. I think it was definitely
meant what to you other than all the obvious things, fame, wealth, and all that?
Yeah, it changed my life. That, you know, the most obvious thing, clearly, it utterly changed my life. It transformed my life situation. We were in a precarious, my daughter and I were in a precarious situation when, for a few years. But beyond that, it connects me. Harry connected me to... it's just been the through line through so much of my life.
Yeah.
And so when I look at back at the books, I can remember where I was when I wrote all these 17 years I spent with those characters, 17 years.
But do you talk to them in some real sense? I mean, do you
The one that I miss the most, beyond any character, is Dumbledore. And he was a strange character, because I always say I feel like I wrote him from somewhere in the back of my brain. He would often say things I didn't know I believed, but once I saw that Dumbledore had said them, oh yeah, that's right, that's true. So he was an interesting character, and I miss him. If I could talk to any of them, it would be Dumbledore.
So you set out to write this new book. You knew it was going to be about adults. What else did you know after you had that inspiration on that plane?
Well, the germ of the idea was a council election, a local council election, that would be subverted by teenagers, which was a device to expose certain secrets. Yeah, that was the basic idea, and I was excited by that idea because it was going to give me an opportunity to explore a lot of things that are important to me, and things that obsess me, frankly.
Like?
And, well, for example, I've just talked about the fact that I was in a very precarious situation. For a few years I was probably as poor as you can go without being homeless in the UK, which is not to say that friends and family didn't help me, because they did, but, you know, it was tough. And
you were writing a book and had to depend on the government.
Well, yeah, I did, although I was working part-time. The law at that time was you could earn up to a very small amount a week without forfeiting housing benefit, which was the thing that was keeping us homed. So I worked up to that amount. I had a clerical job in a church at one point. So and then I was teaching, but we were still existing partly on benefits. I couldn't wholly support us. And then the miracle happened. Harry was published, and we really didn't look back. After a few months, it changed my life. But that period of my life was a formative experience for me, and it shaped my worldview, and it always will shape my worldview. The experience of having been part of a mass of people who are very voiceless, the experience of being scapegoated and stigmatized, because that was the political climate at that time, really has coloured my worldview ever since, and I don't think I'll ever lose that.
This audio program is presented by Audible.com. Audible, audio that speaks to you wherever you are.